So today we're talking about Infosec. I'm joined by Simon King, Infinigate. Infinigate are leading IT and cybersecurity distributors. Simon, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So to get started, what do we mean by the term Infosec?
Okay, sure. So Infosec really is about the protection of information, really from a top-level generic term. That's the simple answer. Information security has been around for a very long time, since the beginning of having to work in an office. But underlyingly, information security it's kind of founded on I'd say 3 points, and they're affectionately known as the CIA triad. And the CIA triad is really how we kind of define how we look after information in a security way. So first of all, it's broken down into confidentiality. So who has access to information? The information that they are trying to access, is it relevant for their role? Is it relevant to their company? And this is where you start to look at some of the authentication controls that you have in place. Where you start talking about MFA, username and passwords, biometrics, all of those kind of things. The I part is integrity, making sure that the actual data is accurate, is relevant. A business can't function without accurate information. When it gets stored somewhere, if it's in a database, there needs to be integrity checking to make sure that that the information is still valid and it's still going to work for what you're trying to do. So integrity deals not just with storage, but deals with actually the whole life cycle of that information, from when it's really created to when it's no longer actually needed. And then the final one really is dealing with the availability of that data. So really, as we move into this modern world now, and you hear the wonderful term of digital transformation, really a lot more information now is being stored in the cloud. Brings into play both the confidentiality and the integrity, but also the availability of that information. So where information is stored and how people access it is just as important as when people are going to be accessing that information. And now you see the likes of Microsoft Teams, Google Cloud, and all the others that are there, that availability is a key part for an organization to be able to work. There is as part of that CIA triad, there is kind of one that kind of sits to the side, and that's called non-repudiation. And non-repudiation is basically you are who you say you are, and there's irrefutable proof that that's the case. And then you go into the whole world of PKI, public key infrastructure, which I won't bore you with today. Very, very annoying thing to have to learn.
Great. And how do you define the key differences between information security and cybersecurity?
Well, information security, I suppose the way I would look at it is different levels. So information security really is what we'd class as the umbrella term, and it covers all aspects of security against information, both physical and logical. So the controls that you have in place are covered right across somebody who has a piece of paper which has sensitive information. How should the person handle that piece of information? When they're finished with it, should it go in the bin, or should it go into a secure bin? Information security covers both that side, but also what would be the more technical and the more logical side. And that's really where we start talking about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is what I would class as a branch of information security, but it's probably one of the most important parts at the moment. Again, as we talked about digital transformation, the move of how organizations are working is squarely focused more in the world of cyberspace, and that's where we have the cybersecurity. But they in effect are trying to do the same thing. They're all about making sure that you're dealing with information in a secure way, just in an umbrella with the information, but also when we're talking about the computing space, that's cybersecurity.
Fantastic. And in your experience, what are the key areas that people should focus on? What are the big rocks, if you like, that people should focus on in terms of information security?
Yeah, it's a hard one, really. There are so many different aspects to information security. I think if you're starting out as an organization, it's really about process. That's kind of one of the key bits for information security. And you'll see, if you haven't read about it already, you'll certainly see it now, is something called GRC, which is governance, risk, and compliance. And these are, again, terms that are used to help you to define which parts of the business that deals with information security and how you look after that information in a secure way. So when we're dealing with things like compliance, we're really talking about, are you complying to local law? And here we can bring in the wonderful world of the GDPR. How we deal with personal information is a compliance requirement that all organizations that deal within the European Union have to adhere to. So are we dealing with that? We have governance, which is massively grown, and I think it's been quite driven by GDPR, but it's been doing it in its own right, certainly in the financial sector for a long time. But here we're talking about things like ISO 27001. How do we as an organization deal with information security? So the ISO standards, which are an accredited, recognized body, tell you how to do this. And when you do become accredited, in the eyes of your peers, you've achieved a certain standard of information security. And that helps to establish you in a business aspect. So those two are very common elements that the top level management within business are looking at. Coupled with that, we deal with the risk side of things. And risk really is what information security is all about. Where information is, how it's accessed, how it's used is all based on a level of risk. The greater the risk, the more we should do something about it. But perhaps maybe if there is a risk, we don't need to kind of worry about it quite so much. We can accept that risk. So dealing with this key area, really, when we're looking about risk mitigation, that's when we start to bring in the technologies that I think you're asking the question about, really. Process-driven activities where we talk about governance and compliance help to drive down into business what actually needs to be done to achieve that. So for example, in our organization here at Infinigate, I have to achieve GDPR compliance. How do I actually do that? So one of the requirements is about making sure the endpoint at which people work on is secure. And again, how do I do that? So some of the key areas that I would say that you should look at is things like defense in depth. So if somebody's dealing with a laptop, how do they get access to the laptop? What controls do you have in place? Do you have port and device control? Do you have antivirus or threat intelligence to prevent potential malware or other kind of infections dropping onto that? How do you get access to email? How do you access the internet? How do you access cloud services? Defense in depth approach is a key way of being able to do that. And the technologies you put in there should not be the same. They should be overlapped to be able to help give that defense in depth. Things such as how you get access, the authorization as well is another key area. And we've seen this explosion now as people move into this, the cloud side and digital transformation. We really see the use of, like I say, Teams and Google Suite, where you need to be able to identify people properly. And that's really where we start talking about the AAA approach, which is authorization, how you get access, what you're getting access to, and recording of that. So the auditing of that, they're all kind of key elements. You see the development of IAM solutions, identity and access management solutions. So traditionally, everything has kind of been held internally in a network. You log in and you get access to what you need to get access to. Service over here, a service over there, but it's all within the same space. As you've moved more towards the cloud, people look for best of breed. They take Microsoft Teams or G Suite. They take some HR solution. They'll take some, some processing solution, and they will provide that for different people in the organization. They're all different parts. What I would class as what an organization would need to be successful. But that increases the risk landscape. So where we see things like IAM now, where you can actually take all of these different bits and put them into the same space and then force control, those are kind of the key drivers that I would say from the information security space. And then along with the traditionals, you have encryption, always a great player. It never goes away. Always important where it happens. So desktop encryption all the way through to the transport encryption. Those are key elements. And now as we move into mobile technology and the wonderful world of the Internet of Things, that's a beautiful place to be going into. All of the bits that we've been learning previously from what would have been on-premise solutions are now having to be re-engineered, redeveloped, because it hasn't really been thought of for a lot of what we're seeing. So going back to your question, the information security is a never-ending game. It's really about looking about how we can make sure to use those founding bedrocks of security, which is confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability, and then using the tools to be able to deliver against those.
Fantastic, some really useful tips there. And you've actually mentioned most of the topics that we have covered or will be covering in the security glossary video. So thank you for that. Feel free to go check those other videos out as well. Well, Simon, thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, thank you too.
Thank you for watching today's video. Be sure to keep following us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube for the daily video updates.